Hey guys, Mr. Brandon here, and today I tried playing my guitar, but it wasn't really working out for me. I couldn't really settle with a song that I wanted to learn and play for y'all. I wasn't feeling it. So instead, because I've gotten a few requests to do more videos like the Rusty Boy video before this, where I showed some of my stuff that I do besides music, I decided to maybe go into that in a little more detail. So why do I paint at all? What got me started being interested in this kind of thing, because I certainly didn't grow up, you know, being like amazing in art class or anything like that. I haven't gone to art school like my wife, or, I've never really had any kind of proper training for this kind of stuff. But what started it was when the character Spider-Gwen from the Spider-Man universe of characters, when she was first released in the comics, I introduced my daughter to the character because I'm a big Spider-Man fan, and it just felt like a natural way to get my daughter like hyped on some Spider-Man stuff. And there at the time there was no such thing as a 6-inch Spider-Man or Spider-Gwen action figure, and I had been collecting some 6-inch Spider-Man figures at the time, like the Marvel Legends series of figures. And so I took I was curious. I was like, how can I make a figure for my daughter? And I bought a Spider-Girl action figure, Peter Parker's daughter, May Parker, and it came with, inside of that figure, it came with, they are like something, it's called like Build-A-Figure, where you buy one action figure, but it comes with like a piece of another action figure. And if you buy like 6 or so action figures, you get all the pieces you need for like a 7th one. I'm not really into all that crap, so instead I took the hood that was inside of Spider-Girl's packaging. It was like an orange hobgoblin hood, and I was like, and so I cut it all up and I remixed it into this Spider-Gwen action figure right here, and I'm super proud of it because there was nothing like it at the time. There totally is now, but at the time there was nothing. And it turned out really well, I think. It's not, perfection by any means, but it's really cool, it's unique, and there's nothing quite like it out there. I made those webs out of floral wire, very bendable and posable. And so I wound up liking this enough to where I was like, man, I want to do this to some figures that I dig too. And I wound up getting the 4 original Ghostbusters at their 6-inch sizes. So I got really big into wanting to make their proton packs on their back more movie accurate. I've cut up like their neutrino wands on their proton packs and remixed them to be more accurate. I made those proton streams coming out of their proton packs out of the same floral wire that I made these webs out of. They have been dunked in something called like grip dip or something like that. It's a black rubbery liquid substance that you dip tools or whatever else into to try and give them a grip when they previously had no good grip on them. So after doing like a dunk or two of floral wire into that, I painted the whole thing white so that those orange and blue colors on the streams really popped. So that, seeing my Ghostbusters and knowing how much work I spent on those, I was super proud of that as well. And shortly after that, a good friend of mine, Ryan Blassingame, at the time, he was like, dude, check out this board game that I found out about. It's called Star Wars Imperial Assault. And I was like, oh man, this is super awesome. Like, it was the perfect blend of like Star Wars and RPG stuff and Final Fantasy Tactics type of gameplay. And through my previous experience customizing those action figures and watching some videos by a guy named Sorastro, who's epic and very, very good at what he does, that guy pretty much by himself taught me how and gave me the confidence to want to paint at this miniature scale. And so I have now painted several Star Wars miniatures from this board game, Imperial Assault. And I don't know. It's funny because it's like it's just a small little thing. Like, that's the size of this thing. This is a shoebox lid. I can't tell you how many hours of effort these figures have been. And it's kind of amusing to me to think about the scale of time that it has taken me to make those versus the scale that they physically are. It's amusing. But anyway, a lot of them were painted at the time using some oil paint. And that is, now that I know this, that is not what you want to do. You want to paint minis with acrylic paint. But I did a pretty good job, I think, for using oil paints. These were the first oil paints that I got. Just a bunch of, like, pretty standard testers paints for models that you can find. I bought most of these at Michael's. But over the years, sharing, social media photos and stuff of my minis, I've gotten, all kinds of compliments, and I appreciate those, but I've also gotten some critiques. And one of them has been, hey man, it looks like you need to thin your paint out a little bit. And I was like, And at first, I was kind of like ticked off about that. I was like, man, get off my thing, man. This is awesome, and I like it. But I thought about it more, and I was like, yeah, I can see that. Like, you're looking at what you're capable of, and then you're looking at Google, image results of these super professionally painted miniatures, and you're like, all right, I kind of see what you're talking about, man. Like, their paint jobs look really nice, and mine looks kind of clumpy. And so I started converting over to acrylic paint and learning how to, I'm still not like amazing, but I've learned how to, mix water with my paint to get it at a better consistency for it to apply paint to the figures without losing a lot of detail, because there's a lot of detail on these miniatures, and it's super easy to lose that detail and cover it up if you're just like paint all over it. You gotta be a little more finesse, a little more gentle with it. So the kind of paint that you actually want is like Citadel paint seems to be like a super common pro paint brand that I see a lot of miniature painters using. It's, I don't know if it's designed by Games Workshop, which is like a company that makes things like the Warhammer board game series of miniatures. But anyway, these Citadel paints, they're fantastic. Well, they're also kind of expensive, and I don't know. I haven't started my Citadel collection yet, but what I do have are some affordable paints that I've also gotten from places like Michael's or Hobby Lobby. So these are just some, like, what is this? Master's Touch Fine Art Studio acrylic paint. Okay. And they work for me, between these and these like super cheap Craftsmart. I think all these paints came in one like universal container. These paints are total crap, and yet they work. At this scale, I don't know. I'm satisfied with what I have churned out with these cruddy paints. I have, over the years, collected a weird assortment of stuff, because when you're making these minis, there are all kinds of random things that are glued down to these character bases. I've cut off limbs from other minis that I didn't need. I have all these lightsabers on these characters. They start off plastic, just like the minis, and you would normally have to paint them. And I am not really good at painting a lightsaber to look like a lightsaber. But I did find these little glass rods. Here we go. These fuse work rods that seem to be made to maybe like make repairs or use as a bonding agent in stained glass window making, if I'm not mistaken. I don't totally know what they're for, but what I'm using them for are these really nice, straight, see-through, transparent lightsaber blades. So that was a cool find at Hobby Lobby. I've got all kinds of tools in here, you know, brushes that I've used on my foam stuff, hot glue gun, little LED lights that change colors. Some of my students have seen me use this in a portal when I make terrain for my minis. I've got these like screen repair squares for like window screens and stuff. Those have made for pretty cool, where's my finger at? Where's this thing? Here we go. Pretty cool like interior ground bases for some of my minis. Those are, you know, this guy here and Shiloh Varad here. They have window screens on their base to make it look like, I don't know, they're inside of a spaceship or some kind of futuristic flooring. I don't really know. Just some super random stuff. This little Jawa. Dang, if I can get it off the base without like destroying this thing. This Jawa is pretty rad because I had an old watch that I used to wear when I was in the Army in basic training. And it just kind of sat around after I got out of the Army for years in a junk drawer. And when I was doing these minis, I started thinking on that miniature scale, and I was like, man, I need like little things. And you know, what do Jawas do? They're like droid junk scavengers, and they, you know, always grabbing like droid parts and stuff. So I cracked open this watch, and inside I found all these, like, if this will focus, all these little gears and gizmos that I glued all over this guy's base. And I know you can't really see it great on the footage that I'm recording right now because I kind of suck as a cameraman. I don't have somebody like Scott Hartman at my house right now filming this amazingly. So I'm just going to have to make do with what I'm doing here. But there's so many little stories like that on these bases where it's not always just, you know, it started off very basic with things like dirt and grass on a lot of these figures. That's kind of how I started. I was like, okay, yeah. I took some sand from like a sandbox at a job that I used to work at and put it in a bag, and I would save that and glue it down with super glue to these bases. I bought like, there's so much crud in here. This is like a bunch of stuff I use for terrain. Here's some moss from my best friend's wife, Jacie, and her previous endeavor making terrariums with her company, Moss Love. Shout out to Jacie, thank you very much, because these are awesome. I've got I do a lot of cooking, and so I have a lot of empty like spice jars that are come in a lot of handy storing up all this kind of stuff. But you take like this model grass, and you'll see that all over these minis, just all kinds of grass and stuff. Well, later on, I'm always trying to find like something different that I can do to these bases to kind of make it a little more spicy. Whether that's, snow, like this dude over here in the back, or the lava guy next to him, or some of these like Ahsoka Tano right here, her more like rocky base. It's got some moss on here from Jacie. It's got these little seashells to try and make it look more like I don't know, like she's on a beach or something. So I got toasted coconut chips. It's a bunch of seashells. So I don't know, but oops. All kinds of glue down here. Titebond III, Ben Heaver, what up? Some moss fell out. Anyway, yeah, I went over this in my Rusty Boy video, but yeah, this is my workstation. My wife's light because she's the real artist in the house. Thanks for letting me use this. I don't know. I don't even really know what to say right now. that's my stuff. That's my story about why I do this, and definitely a big Star Wars fan. Man, I don't know what to say right now. So I'm gonna wish y'all a good weekend, and thanks for letting me nerd out about stuff that I dig that's not music. And I don't know. Catch you in the next one. Cheers.